So I think a lot of people are curious about software testing, like how it all works. It's something we don't really see,
Yeah.
but it's super important because, software is everywhere. And today we're going to do a deep dive into Tosca, which is this tool that's becoming really popular in software development.
Mm.
You actually sent over a document called Tosca Test Automation and some training materials from an organization called QA Training Hub. So let's see what we can learn.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about Tosca is that it's not just about, like finding bugs. It's about trying to build this culture of quality throughout the software development process. And, these days we rely on software for pretty much everything. So that's kind of a big deal.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So this document, Tosca Test Automation, says that Tosca is all about automating tests. To be honest, I never really thought about it before, but clicking every button and link on a website or an app sounds like it would be a nightmare to do manually.
Oh, it would be. Absolutely a nightmare. And so time-consuming. But, that's the beauty of automation. A tool like Tosca can run these tests over and over again so that people don't have to. And that frees up, the developers and the testers to think about other things, like the more complex stuff. Or maybe, the creative aspects of the software.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, Tosca is letting computers do what they're good at.
Yeah.
Which is, the repetitive things. And that lets the humans focus on the things that, need more brain power. So tell me more about QA Training Hub. What do they do?
Well, QA Training Hub, they're all about making Tosca more accessible. They offer this training that helps people learn how to use Tosca, specifically for projects in, like e-commerce, banking, and insurance, which, if you think about it, those are industries where even a small software problem could be a huge deal.
So it sounds like their training is very specific
Right.
to getting people jobs in those industries.
Yeah, totally. And they even offer like job assistance and stuff. And what I thought was really cool about their mission is that they want to make this type of training affordable because, not everyone can afford those expensive courses or boot camps. So it's great that they're trying to like level the playing field a bit.
Yeah, I love when organizations do that
Yeah.
and make tech skills more accessible. I know that there aren't enough software testers right now, so I'm sure anyone with this kind of training would be in high demand.
Oh, absolutely. And this course from QA Training Hub, it's really thorough. It goes deep into Tosca, from the basics to the more advanced stuff. It's actually divided into all these different modules that focus on specific things you can do with Tosca.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about these modules and where do they start?
Well, two of the modules that really stood out to me were modules 9 and 10. They're all about error handling and recovery. Basically, you learn how to create tests that can keep running even when something unexpected happens, like if a dialog box doesn't load or a verification step fails. You're basically teaching the tests to be able to roll with the punches.
So if there's like a hiccup, you don't want the entire test to crash.
Exactly. A good example of that would be like a dialog failure. Let's say you're testing an online shopping cart, and there's this pop-up that's supposed to appear to confirm that you added an item to the cart. Now, what happens if that pop-up doesn't show up? For whatever reason. Your test needs to be able to handle that without, completely falling apart.
That's so smart. You want those tests to be robust
Yeah.
and be able to keep going, even when things go wrong. What other modules did you think were interesting?
Well, there are also modules on synchronization and regular expressions. Now, those might sound a bit technical, but they're super important for handling the more complicated scenarios.
Those are the ones I was a little intimidated by, but I'm sure they're not that bad once you understand them.
No, not at all. Think of synchronization as making sure that your test is interacting with the application at just the right time. Like, for example, if you're testing a website where the information loads dynamically, you don't want the test to start looking for something before it actually appears on the screen. Right.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's like,
Yeah.
making sure everything's in sync so the test doesn't make the wrong judgment.
Yeah, exactly. And regular expressions, those are basically powerful tools for finding patterns in text.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you were testing a form and you needed to make sure the user entered a valid email address, you could use regular expressions to do that, and it would be super efficient.
So these modules are helping the tests to be more flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get into modules 13 and 14, which cover string manipulation and decision control. Those sound a little technical too, but they're basically about manipulating data and building logic into your tests.
Can you give me an example of what that would look like
Yeah.
in a real-world situation?
Sure. With string manipulation, you could do things like measure the length of text strings, which would be useful if you were validating, say, a password that had to be a certain number of characters long.
Okay. So it's adding that extra level of verification to make sure everything is working correctly.
Exactly. And with decision control, you can make your test behave differently depending on the data it encounters. So it's like you can use if-else conditions to tell the test, okay, if the user is logged in, then do this. Otherwise, do that.
You're giving the test a little bit of decision-making power.
Exactly. It's like you're adding intelligence to the test so they can handle more complex situations. And then it gets even more interesting when you move into loops and repetitions in modules 15 and 16. These modules are all about automating those tasks. That would be incredibly boring for a human to do over and over again. Well, let's say you need to test a form. Instead of manually entering data, like hundreds of times, to see how the form handles it, you could use loops in Tosca to do that automatically.
That would save so much time.
It would. And it would probably prevent errors, too.
Okay, what about modules 17 and 18? T-box operations and desktop applications.
These modules show how versatile Tosca is. You learn that it's not just for testing web apps. It can handle a lot of different applications, even ones that run on your desktop. Like you can learn how to control Windows and interact with elements in desktop software.
So Tosca can basically test any kind of software.
Pretty much, yeah.
So with all this automation, you still need to be able to understand what happened during the test, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's where modules 19 and 20 come in, reporting and validation.
Okay, so tell me about those.
Well, Tosca makes it really easy to generate these really detailed reports that highlight any bugs or issues that were found. It's like having a detective on your development team.
So it's not just about running the tests,
Yeah.
but also about analyzing the results.
Right. And these reports are super valuable for everyone who's working on the project, developers, project managers, maybe even clients, because it creates transparency about the software's quality, which is really important.
I like that, transparency. Okay, so what about modules 21 and 22? Record playback and browser operations.
These modules, they're all about making Tosca user-friendly. So record playback is a really cool feature because you can actually record your actions on a website or application, and Tosca will watch what you're doing and then create the test steps automatically.
Yeah, so it's like Tosca is learning from you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to, create a really basic test quickly and then build upon it later. And browser operations focuses on, everything related to how the test interacts with web browsers. You can tell it to open new tabs, go to specific websites. You can even handle cookies.
So Tosca can handle like pretty much any web interaction.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, what about modules 23 and 24? Modular framework and libraries.
These modules are all about efficiency. Tosca lets you create these reusable blocks of code so you don't have to write the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like building a library of ready-made test components.
So it's about preventing repetition.
Yes, and making the whole process more efficient.
Okay, and then there are modules 24 and 25, data-driven testing and dynamic expressions.
Right. These modules are for handling data variation in your tests. So let's imagine you're testing a feature that takes user input, like different names, email addresses, product choices. With data-driven testing, you can create tests that automatically run using a whole set of data, which, would save a ton of time.
Yeah, you want to make sure that no matter what the user enters,
yeah,
the software is going to work correctly.
Exactly. And dynamic expressions let you manipulate and transform data within your tests, which makes them really flexible.
Okay, cool. What other modules stood out to you?
Well, modules 26 and 27, which focus on explicit static name and test cases in Tosca. Those give you a look at some of Tosca's more advanced features, like they teach you how to interact with specific elements in your application, even if they don't have unique identifiers. It's like teaching your tests to have X-ray vision so they can see and interact with the underlying structure of the application.
Wow, that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And then finally, we have modules 28 and 29, which cover exploratory testing and cardinality. And those give you a glimpse into Tosca's ability to support all sorts of different testing approaches.
Okay, so what exactly are exploratory testing and cardinality?
So exploratory testing is about giving testers the freedom to explore the application in a less structured way. They can experiment with different inputs and interactions and try to find unexpected behavior or defects.
So it's more about using your intuition and creativity to try and break the software.
Yeah, you got it. And cardinality is about understanding the relationships
Hmm.
between different data elements in your application. Tosca can actually help you test those relationships to make sure that the data is consistent and has integrity.
So it's about making sure that all the pieces of data
Yeah.
fit together properly?
It's about going beyond just testing the individual components
Oh.
and making sure the whole system is working together.
Wow. This QA Training Hub course really does cover a lot.
It does. It's really comprehensive and well-structured. It gives you a really solid foundation in pretty much every aspect of Tosca.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Anyone who takes this course would come out with some serious Tosca skills.
Oh, for sure. And what I really like is they don't just focus on the theory. They really stress hands-on practice. They actually walk you through real-world projects, especially in areas like e-commerce, banking, and insurance, which we talked about earlier. Those are industries where software quality is so important.
Yeah. I could see how that would give you really valuable experience.
Definitely. It's one thing to understand, like, how Tosca works in theory, but it's a whole other thing to actually apply it in real situations. And remember, they also offer job assistance, which is huge when you're trying to get into this field.
Yeah, that's a huge plus. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different modules.
Yeah.
But there's this concept in the Tosca Test Automation document that I wanted to ask you about, model-based testing. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Model-based testing is this really interesting approach where instead of manually creating test cases for every possible scenario, you create a visual model of the application you're testing. And this model basically maps out all the different paths and interactions a user could take.
So it's like creating a roadmap of all the different ways someone could use the app.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And then here's the cool part. Tosca can automatically generate test cases based on that model. So it looks at all the possible paths and creates tests to make sure that each one works correctly.
Wow. So it's taking away
Yeah.
a lot of the manual work.
It is. And it's really valuable in agile development environments where the software is constantly being updated because it helps you keep your tests up to date.
I can see how that would be a huge time saver.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've been focusing a lot on functional testing, but I know Tosca can also do other types of testing, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's really good at functional testing, making sure the software does what it's supposed to. But it can also handle things like performance testing and API testing.
Can you remind me what those are?
Sure. So performance testing is all about seeing how the software performs under pressure. Like you're simulating real-world usage, like a lot of users accessing the website at the same time, and you want to see how the software handles it.
So basically, you're trying to see if the software can handle the heat.
Yeah, exactly. You want to make sure it can handle those peak loads and still deliver a good user experience. And then API testing is about testing the application programming interfaces, or APIs, which are basically the systems that handle the communication between different software components.
So you're making sure that all the different parts are talking to each other correctly.
Exactly.
It sounds like Tosca is a pretty comprehensive tool.
It really is. And that's why knowing how to use it is such a valuable skill.
So what kind of person would be a good Tosca tester? Like, what are the skills and qualities that make someone successful in this role?
That's a good question. Obviously, you need to have some technical skills. You need to understand how Tosca works, be able to write test scripts, analyze results. But there are also some really important soft skills.
Like what?
Well, for one, problem-solving skills are crucial.
Yeah.
Software testing is all about finding and fixing problems. So you need to be able to think critically, analyze situations, come up with solutions.
So it's not just about following instructions.
No, not at all. You have to be able to think on your feet. And communication skills are also really important.
Yeah, I can see how that would be important. When you're working with a team.
Definitely. You need to be able to explain your findings to developers, project managers, everyone. And you need to be able to do that clearly, both verbally and in writing.
It's almost like you're a translator.
Kind of, yeah.
And what about attention to detail?
Oh, that's huge. Software bugs can be really sneaky, so you need to have a really good eye for detail.
That's being a detective.
Exactly. And finally, I would say, a passion for learning is so important because technology is always changing.
So you have to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, pretty much. If you like learning new things and you're comfortable with, things constantly changing, then software testing could be a really good fit for you.
Yeah, it sounds like a really challenging but rewarding career.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about the skills and qualities
Yeah.
that you need to be a good Tosca tester. But let's zoom out a bit. How is Tosca and automation in general changing the role of the software tester?
That's a really interesting question, and it's something that a lot of people are talking about. There's this fear that automation is going to make human testers obsolete.
Yeah. But you were saying earlier that QA Training Hub is having trouble finding enough qualified Tosca testers. So it doesn't seem like the robots are taking over just yet.
Right. There's still a huge demand for human testers, and I think that's because while automation is great, it's not a magic solution.
Yeah.
There are still things that humans are better at than machines, especially when it comes to testing software.
So it's not really humans versus machines. It's more about finding the right balance.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to use each one's strengths.
Exactly. So automation is perfect for those repetitive tasks, the things that take a lot of time, and the things that humans would probably get bored doing. But humans are much better at things like designing those creative test cases, interpreting those complex results, and really thinking about the user experience.
So instead of being afraid of automation, maybe testers should see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. It frees them up to focus on the more interesting parts of their jobs, the things that require more creativity and problem solving.
And as AI and machine learning get better, we're probably going to see even more advanced testing tools.
Well, absolutely. Tools that can learn from past experiences and adapt to new situations.
So the role of the tester is actually becoming more important.
I think so.
Okay, so let's talk about the bigger picture. What kind of impact do you think Tosca and test automation are having on the software industry as a whole?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Tosca and other automation tools are having a massive impact on software quality, across all industries. As software becomes more complex and everything becomes more interconnected, the need for testing is only going to increase.
And these tools are helping us meet that need.
They are. They're allowing teams to test more thoroughly and more efficiently, which ultimately leads to better software.
Which is good for everyone.
Yeah, means faster development cycles, lower costs, and happier customers.
It's not just about making the testing process better. It's about improving the quality of the software itself.
Right. When software is well tested, it just works better, and that builds trust.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to go back to QA Training Hub for a second. We talked about their mission to make testing education more accessible and affordable. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. They understand that there's a real need for software testers, but not everyone can afford to go to a traditional training program.
By making it more affordable and offering job assistance, they're giving more people the opportunity to get into this field.
Exactly. I think we need more of that in the tech industry.
I agree. The tech industry needs to be more diverse and inclusive.
Absolutely.
So to anyone listening who is thinking about a career in software testing, I would say definitely check out QA Training Hub.
I would second that. And even if you don't end up using Tosca, the things you'll learn in a good software testing course will be valuable no matter what.
Yeah. You're learning the fundamentals. Okay, so learning Tosca sounds like a good way to stay ahead of the curve in the tech industry. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to bring up. We've talked a lot about the benefits of Tosca and automation, but are there any downsides? Like, is there anything we should be cautious about?
That's a really important question, and I think it's something that everyone working in software development needs to be thinking about, that, especially in testing. We have to make sure that we're using automation responsibly and ethically.
Right. It's easy to get excited about new technology.
Yeah.
But we also have to think about the potential consequences. So what kind of ethical considerations are we talking about here?
Well, one thing is the impact of automation on jobs. It's understandable that people are worried about machines taking over jobs. That used to be done by humans.
Yeah, especially in software testing, where it seems like automation is playing a bigger and bigger role.
Right. But I think it's important to remember that automation is not about replacing humans completely. It's about helping humans do their jobs better and freeing them up to focus on the things that require human skill.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, I think so. It's about figuring out how humans and machines can work together to create the best possible outcome.
And that's where the role of the software tester becomes even more important, right?
Definitely. The testers need to be the ones who are guiding the implementation of automation and making sure that it's being used. ethically and
Yeah,
effectively.
they're like the strategists.
Yeah, exactly.
What about bias in testing data? Is that something we need to be worried about?
Oh, for sure. We know that algorithms are only as good as the data that they're trained on. So if the data is biased, then the results will be biased too.
That's a good point. Technology isn't neutral.
It isn't.
It reflects
Yeah,
the values of the people who create it.
exactly. And as software testers, we have a responsibility
Yeah.
to be aware of those potential biases and to work towards creating testing processes that are fair and inclusive.
So it's not just about writing good test scripts. It's about
Mhm.
thinking about the bigger picture.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just to recap, Tosca is a powerful tool that's changing how software is tested.
Mhm.
It's making testing more efficient
Mm.
and more comprehensive. And that's leading to better software.
And I think it's safe to say that Tosca and automation in general are going to continue to play a huge role in the future of software development.
So that means that software testers
Yeah.
need to keep learning and adapting.
They do. It's an exciting time to be in this field.
It is. So to everyone listening, if you're interested in software testing, I encourage you to check out Tosca. It's a challenging field,
Yeah.
but it's also very rewarding.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to discover the next big thing in software testing.
That's a great thought. Well, thanks for joining us today
Yeah.
for this deep dive into Tosca. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.